Some call it the Arab Spring, and others call it the Arab Winter. It may yet remain to be seen what season we are really in the Middle East. However, this report came to us on the 11th of February, and of course that was on Saturday. This came from Debka File. Western intelligence sources reporting in real time found Saturday night, February 11th, that Bashar Assad's loyal military and security forces had by and large managed to subdue the rebellion against the regime. They are now purging the last pockets of resistance, especially in Syria's third largest city, Homs. Still to come are possible flare-ups here and there, and inevitably more horror stories of atrocities. But to all intents and purposes, Syria's 11-month uprising is all but over. Let's, before we go to the next step here, let's give a little background. You may remember that Bashar Assad's father, Hafez Assad, had a huge uprising against himself back, 20 years ago or so. He ended up killing 25,000 people to bring this uprising down. Now, back in those days, there was no responsibility to protect. There was no claim by the international community that they had the right to intervene in the affairs of another nation, and so it largely just happened. It was a civil war that never succeeded. Well, here it comes again, this time with Bashar Assad. The uprising has been going now about 11 months, and the reports say somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people have been killed. Now, there are people who paint this as a foreign-inspired rebellion, hoping to catch the wave of resistance from the Arab Spring revolutions that have swept through different parts of the Middle East to topple the government of Bashar Assad. Mr. Assad claims this is nothing more or less than a civil war. It's a rebellious uprising, and that it does not represent the Syrian people. He claims that he has more people in favor of him than ever would be against him. In the meantime, Turkey and other elements are hoping for the overthrow of Bashar Assad, including Saudi Arabia, including the United States of America. However, Russia says, no, we're not going to allow to happen here what happened in Libya with Mr. Muammar Gaddafi. So because Russia and China have been willing to use their veto power against resolutions that would have cleared the way for NATO to come in and do in Syria what she did in Libya, since that was not available, now all of a sudden it appears the revolution has lost its steam. So this article, which appeared on Saturday, remember the phrase, but to all intents and purposes, Syria's 11-month uprising is all but over. Remember that, because here's another article 2 days later from the same source, Debka File. It's entitled, Saudis Prompt Al-Qaeda, Iraq to Move to Syria. Assad's ouster top priority. Saudi rulers, seeing Bashar Assad on the verge of defeating the opposition to his rule, are reported by intelligence sources as taking a hand in turning Al-Qaeda Iraqi cells loose against Assad. Saudi agents used their pull with Iraqi Sunnis to persuade Al-Qaeda leaders that Assad and his Alawite regime were their most dangerous foe. The same message was also broadcast by their Pakistan-based leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri. Al-Qaeda's strength was fast building up in Syria, say U.S. intelligence agencies tracking the jihadist Middle East movement. 10 days before Zawahiri, Sunday, February the 11th, issued his videotaped instruction to all combat strength in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey to converge on the Syrian battlefield. Monday, Iraq's acting Interior Minister Adnan al-Assadi confirmed that a number of jihadists had gone to Syria, reporting also that the price of weapons in Mosul had risen because they were being sent to the opposition in Syria from Baghdad to Nineveh. Debka Files counter-terror sources estimate that the bulk of the 1,500 strong Iraq-based Al-Qaeda network, Syrians, Egyptians, Libyans, and others, including Pakistanis, Lebanese, Palestinians, have headed to Syria. This accounts for the sharp drop in terrorist attacks inside Iraq. Okay, let's see if we can make some sense of this, understand this. Al-Qaeda represents the Sunni faction, which was the faction of Saddam Hussein. They have not liked it since America went in, defeated Saddam Hussein, replaced the minority Sunni government with a majority Shiite government. Now, the Shiites also rule in Iran. So now Al-Qaeda is trying to overthrow the Shiite government that America allowed to be installed, and they're continually bombing in Iraq. We, in the meantime, went in and did our dirty work and left. And we had quite unintended consequences because Iran, which, if we can believe the news, is our bitter enemy and the world's greatest threat to peace. Iran was so happy that we got rid of Saddam Hussein because Iran and Iraq under Saddam Hussein had waged an 8-year war with over 1 million fatalities. So now he's gone. The Sunnis have been put down, and Shiites rule in both Iran and in Iraq. But Al-Qaeda says we're not accepting this, so they've waged this terror campaign against the government, trying to bring down the Shiite government to replace it once again with a Sunni government. However, we know that Saudi Arabia is Sunni. Now, you got to keep this straight in your mind because this is very much a war between Sunni and Shiite. The Shiites control about 15% of Islam. Sunni make up the other 85%. So you have Iran, the government of Bashar Assad, and also elements in Lebanon that are Sunni. But yet you have, no, I said that wrong. Iran, Iraq, and Syria are Shia in their leanings religiously, but the Sunnis want to overthrow them. Okay, so now you got Al-Qaeda fighting against the Shia in Iraq, but they realize that their brethren over in Syria are getting ready to lose and be vanquished. So now they're enticed to go over and help the rebels fight against Bashar Assad. Now, these Al-Qaeda are hardened soldiers for hire. They live and die to fight and to kill. So when you take 1,500 of them and disperse them into Syria, they can do a lot of damage. They can kill a lot of people. They can blow up a lot of things. Nevertheless, Saudi Arabia is putting all of its wealth. I mean, these people are being paid big dollars right now to go in there and risk their life to overthrow the regime of Bashar Assad. That's what's going on right now. And in the meantime, of course, the United States is a friend of Saudi Arabia. The United States has called for the ouster of Bashar Assad, but Russia and China have stood in the way. Okay, have you got all that? That's an interesting scenario. So the report is that even the high commander in Al-Qaeda, Mr. Zawahiri, that he actually has now issued the order for all of Al-Qaeda, whether it be from Egypt, Libya, Pakistan, Lebanon, Palestinians, everybody get to Syria. We got to bind together to overthrow the government of Assad, because if we overthrow Assad, then Iran loses its number one ally. After that, you can go back and fight one more time against the government in Iraq. But it'll do a lot more good for the cause of the Sunni element of Islam if you will get rid of Assad, because that will weaken so much the government in Iran, and it'll be much easier to go back and take care of Iraq later. So that's what is going on right now. A government that seemed on the verge of victory on Saturday now then is faced with this new influx of Al-Qaeda. The Al-Qaeda that fought against us is now fighting against Syria, and we're now rooting for them. And it's also the same Al-Qaeda that went in to fight against Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. I mean, who's the friend and who's the foe? I'm not sure that we really know. But anyway, that's what's going on today. How will it all turn out? I'm not sure I can tell you. I can tell you some things from Bible prophecy, but before we go there, let's look a little bit deeper here, because the latter part of the article, it says, turning to their Sunni friends in Iraq, Saudi agents asked them to convince Al-Qaeda leaders to make Syria their primary war front and Alawite Bashar Assad's overthrow their first priority. They argued that Assad's survival would strengthen Iran's and the Shiites' grip on Baghdad, whereas his removal would weaken both of their enemies. So that's the logic of what's going on right now. Now, when we look at the prophecies, where does all this end up? We know that at the Battle of Armageddon, Russia is going to end up allied with Iran. So Iran is going to survive in one form or another. Russia's also going to apparently come down through Syria to invade Israel. The Bible says that Russia, Iran, it's called Persia in Ezekiel chapter 38, but it's the same thing, and other countries will come down across the Euphrates River. The Euphrates River, of course, flows through Syria, starts in Turkey, flows through Syria, down through Iraq. So the Euphrates River is going to be dried up at the time of the Battle of Armageddon, and Russia and her allies under a United Nations flag. It's going to be a world government action. The Bible in another place says all nations will come against Jerusalem to battle. So they're going to come down representing the world under a world government flag to invade the nation of Israel. So whether Assad survives or whether he doesn't, Syria still will remain Israel's enemy. Iran will still remain Israel's enemy. And all of this chaos in the Middle East, we're headed for the Battle of Armageddon. Now, there's more the Bible says. We'll talk about it after the break.